Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review / knife overview to share with you guys. This is the Civivi Nox frame lock. It's a steel frame lock. I'll let you guys know that this knife is absolutely available right now, and I will link it right down in the description for those of you who want to check it out. Thanks so much to River's Edge Cutlery for sending this in for review. I really appreciate that. You'll be able to find their new arrivals page also down in the description. Thanks to my generous patrons who are supporting me. There's a link for Patreon down below, and please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. Let's go ahead and get a measurement of this guy. Not a big knife, honestly a little bit smaller than I thought it would be. Overall length of the Nox is coming in at, believe it or not, it really does look a little bit bigger than this, about 6.75 inches overall. It does have a sub 3-inch blade, which is going to make some people really happy. If you live in an area where a 3-inch or more blade is going to get you in trouble, yeah, that's definitely under 3 inches. Cutting edge is going to come in at about 2.65 inches overall. Let's go ahead and do some size comparisons up against the Ontario Rat Model 1 and the Ontario Rat Model 2. Sorry, I'll straighten that out. This is definitely closer to the size of the Rat 2. It actually has almost the same amount of cutting edge, but it is absolutely shorter overall because of how they did the handles there on the Rat. How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, smaller in pretty much every way in both of these knives. And last but not least, let's put it up against the Benchmade Reptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue, and its counterpart, the new counterpart, the Benchmade Bug Out. I think a lot of you will notice real quick that even the Benchmade Bug Out makes this knife look pretty small. So this is definitely what I would consider to be a smaller EDC folding knife. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. Thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3. Not a thick knife either. In fact, very, very thin. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. You can see here both knives are longer and taller, even including the flipper tab on this guy. Let's go ahead and do a measurement of blade stock thickness. As is usually the case with Civivi's knives, I don't think the blade stock is very thick. Yeah, 114 thousandths. Is that right? It honestly looks a little bit thinner than that. Let's do it one more time. It's saying, okay, 115. In any case, definitely a thin blade stock. Let's take a look at the inside of this thing real quick. There are a bunch of different flavors, by the way, and when I say flavors, I mean different appearances. That's just a word that's weird, and then when I say it, I have to explain it, so I should probably stop saying that. Not milled at all. So these are solid steel liners. And in this case, we have, they appear to be black washed. I think they're black washed. I don't think they're actually coated. They've done something to darken up the steel. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check. As per usual, you can get my tools right down in the description. They are very inexpensive and very recommendable. All the tools that I use on the channel are actually included in that page. Pivot is T8, and the body screws are also T8. Everything except for the pocket clip screws, which is typical Civivi design. This is going to be very simple to take apart because it's just the two sides of the titanium, the standoffs, and minimal hardware. So that should not be an issue at all. Weight! That's the one thing that I think people are curious about because it is a steel frame lock. I'm going to guess this weighs about 3 ounces. Yeah, it's legitimately, I guess, 3 ounces, right? Very, very close to what I would consider to be ultra lightweight on this channel. You would expect a knife of this size to be well under my threshold for ultra lightweight. Because this is a steel frame lock, right? It's got added weight, and also it's very butt heavy. The balance of this knife is back here behind the primary position for your index finger. So the balance does feel off on this guy. So if you're big into balance, you may not like that. The blade is very thin and light, so there's much more weight in the scales. But it is a small, compact object that weighs a little over 3 ounces, right? So ratios aren't perfect. Do with that information what you will. This is very straightforward. In fact, I'll say this. This is a good knife design, right? I mean, honestly, even without that pivot being there, you could look at this and go, that's a Civivi because it looks like a Civivi, right? We have decent ergonomics. Even considering that this is a small knife, you can just barely get a full grip on this guy. I'm not sure why that really matters there, but you can, right? The position that you're putting your hands in is comfortable other than the pocket clip because they insist on this gooseneck thing, which is okay, not a big deal. There is an area that I suppose if you really wanted to, you could choke up with one knuckle. I wouldn't recommend it. You're pretty close to that blade, and that blade is sharp. Everything looks good. It's typical fit and Civivi fit and finish, so everything is seated correctly. Everything is nice and solid. If you're not familiar with Civivi knives, they are not made in the United States. They are definitely made in China. The blade is a satin finish blade. It's drop point, and it is very, very thin, incredibly thin. The tip is very pointy, and it comes down to a razor thin edge. What's the steel? I saw it earlier, and now I'm trying to find it again. Where did you hide that steel, Civivi? Do they have it on the box? Perhaps. Come on now, I know that I saw the steel on this guy. They hide it so well. It's honestly kind of, oh, there it is. Oh, it's just, you can just barely see it. Nitro V. That's neat. It's one of the more interesting elements here. This is very, very, if you haven't picked up on it, what I'm getting at here is that this is extremely straightforward. This is like, if you took all of Civivi's designs and put them together into one knife, you kind of get this. The weird factor here being that it's a steel frame lock, which is not typical of Civivi, and the fact that it's using Nitro V, which is something they've done, but they don't do often. So there you go. It's running on bearings. The action is all right. It's very similar to other Civivis that I've handled. Because this is a steel frame lock and it's a narrow frame, you have to pay extra attention to where you put your fingers when you're flipping it. It seems like something that everybody should know by now, but believe me, I do have people message me periodically on Instagram. Not that that's a problem. I do welcome it if you have questions, right? If you're new, there's no way to know if you're not aware of it. You cannot put pressure on the lock bar while you're flipping it because it'll make it much harder to flip. You need to keep your fingers off of that lock bar and on the frame. This is why I prefer, especially on smaller knives with a more narrow frame. It's why I prefer a liner lock. The frame lock is just creating this sort of unnecessary, hindrance with it. This is definitely not a hard use knife, and I think a lot of people, while the frame lock is not necessarily considered to be the most hard use of locks, in this case, it doesn't really matter if they use a liner or a frame lock. It's really not going to be used in many settings that people would define as hard use. So I'm not sure why we decided on the steel frame lock here. It's different. That's really about all I can say. There's a lanyard hole. Okay, no big deal. Couple of standoffs back here. They have the same pocket clip that they've been using, and you can switch it over to the left side if you are left-handed. This is pretty easy to manipulate with the left hand, right? In fact, you could argue it's easier for the natural position of your thumb to not contact the frame lock. So there you go. This side is, the lock side. There's no lock bar insert because this is a steel frame lock. The whole thing is already steel. Centering on this guy is good. That's what we expect. We do have a stop pin back here with some shouldering. So very typical construction, very typical looking knife from Civivi. So as far as the good here, this is a good knife design. It's a nice thin edge. It's using an interesting steel, Nitro V. That's a good steel, right? And everything functions the way that it is supposed to. The benefit with a lot of Civivi knives is that they include all of that stuff, and then also, especially on their smaller models, are generally liner locks, which solve the issue of not putting your fingers on a lock bar. Because of that construction, generally, also, they end up having better overall size to weight ratio. So while this guy at 3 ounces is still not really that much of a problem, we have, in fact, it's not a problem at all. We just have a weird balancing issue, right? So steel frame lock, right? It's awkward and feels completely and totally unnecessary. What do they want for this knife? They want about $63. Yeah, okay, it's not bad. Nothing about this knife screams, holy moly, this is spectacular. I mean, this is one of the most generic things that I have ever seen. It's fine. And there's really, other than, the things that I can complain about, the balance of the steel frame lock, the awkwardness as far as space goes, where to put your fingers when you're flipping it, and it's got a little bit of a gooseneck on the bill because Civivi insists on using the same pocket clip. But those are all minor complaints. I suppose the biggest complaint, and this is going to be, depending on how you look at this, a lot of people are going to look at this and go, yeah, straightforward, good knife. And it is, right? I mean, the value is reasonably there. It's just so plain. It is so unbelievably generic. This is one of the most generic knives. I'm showing it because there's a lot of people interested in it. This is I'm not going to say it's an amazingly popular knife. It's just different for Civivi, and it's weird. If you want to pick this knife up for $63, I think, if you like the idea of a steel frame lock and you're like, oh, I love Nitro V and I'm big into the compact designs, right? If you're wondering, is it good quality, right? Is it a good, dependable knife? Yeah, I think for what it was, the scenarios that it was meant to be used in or the environment it was meant to be used in, which is pretty light duty, yeah, it's going to work just fine. I don't know if this black finish is going to offer additional corrosion resistance, but it is a steel frame lock. Then again, even I was about to make a comment about the potential for corrosion, but it would be the same case with a steel liner lock, right? So it's hard for me to sit here and go, this is a recommendable knife. I mean, it is a good knife, and I think the people who buy it will be like, yeah, okay, but I just couldn't imagine anybody, and there's nothing wrong with this. They made this intentionally, right? I don't know that anybody is going to be ultra excited about this. It's just kind of weird, right? If you're looking for a knife that you can throw in your pocket and basically have no feelings towards whatsoever, it's just a knife that you're going to use. You can throw it around. It's going to be fairly durable, right? Unless you jam the tip into something and break it off, which I wouldn't. It's a thin tip. Don't do that, right? This is a knife you can throw in your truck. It's like maybe a secondary knife, just throw wherever and kind of use when you need a knife, right? But there is no flavor here. This is, it's like cooking egg whites and not adding any salt at all. It's just egg whites. It'll do the trick, right? Egg whites are healthy for you. Plenty of protein, right? There's not much bad to say about egg whites. But that's it. There's nothing else there. Have you ever eaten, you ever been hungry and had 2 egg whites? You're not very satisfied afterwards, right? It's fine. Like, the egg whites are good, but then there's nothing there, right? So it's one of those things where it's like a negative positive review. I'm confused by this. I'm confused by why Civivi decided to do this, right? I see a lot of models that come out of Civivi where I'm like, that's slightly different than some of the other things that they have released, and I'm more or less interested in reviewing them, right? But this is very flavorless, and it's just it's a bit awkward. But yeah, it's made well. Value's okay. Steel is interesting, and it's certainly going to cut well and be easy to carry. I hope that you guys got the information that you wanted from this. I don't know that honestly, I'm kind of surprised that it took me 13 and a half minutes to review this. It probably could have been done faster, but I wanted to make sure to emphasize the points that I wanted to emphasize. Again, I do appreciate River's Edge Cutlery for sending this in for me to take a look at. Make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you guys enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives. They're either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe, because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.